Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Facebook Live event hosted by myself, Dr. Nick Tiller, on behalf of Build Up Dietitians. Thank you for joining me for this session. I'm excited to be here. I'm just going to wait another minute or so just to allow any stragglers to join the event. So please stand by. If you haven't yet posted in the comments section, please do so. Tell me where you're streaming from. Tell me what you do for a living. Most importantly, tell me that you can hear and see me okay. I want to know that the audio and visual is working as it should be. So please post in the comments section. I'd appreciate it. And please stand by. We'll get started in just a few moments. Okay then, so let's get started. As I said, my name is Dr. Nick Tiller. I'm a senior researcher in exercise physiology and respiratory medicine at Harbor-UCLA Medical Center here in Los Angeles. I'm also a columnist at Skeptical Inquirer magazine and author of the Skeptics Guide to Sports Science. Now, this session, as you no doubt will know, is about science and pseudoscience in nutrition and health. And the format for the session is pretty simple. We've got about 30 minutes. I'm going to spend the first 15 minutes or so just showing you a few slides to give you an insight into the kind of work that I do and why I think it's important. And then we'll get to some questions and answers. So please, before, during, and after the talk, please post your comments, post your questions, and hopefully we'll have an interesting discussion. I'll get through as many of them as I possibly can. Okay. No, I'm not. I'm not drinking that. I wish I was. It sounds delicious. Okay, great. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Please bear with me while I work out how to do that. Okay, I'm not seeing. Sorry, please bear with me. A few technical difficulties. Okay, well, I'm going to put that off just for the time being until I can figure out how to share my screen. Okay, well, I'll work off the slides anyway and give you an insight into the kind of work that I do, and as I said, why I think it's important. I was going to start the presentation by showing you a big picture of a spider, of a tarantula. And it doesn't work quite as well when you have to imagine it in your head. But if you can just imagine a big, giant, big, hairy, gross, gruesome spider, maybe it's crawling towards you very slowly. And I want you to pay attention to what your kind of inherent visceral reaction would be. And if you're anything like me, it would be one of disgust and perhaps a little bit of fear and repulsion. And that's sort of understandable to a certain extent, but that would be your inherent sort of ingrained emotive response. But when we stop and actually take a more logical, rational approach, there's actually no intellectual reason to be fearful of spiders, even though a lot of people are. Most people are to some degree. Yes, there are a small percentage of spiders that are venomous, but the vast majority of spiders are not harmful to humans. And so when we take a logical, rational approach, actually there's no reason to despise these big hairy spiders in the way that we do. In fact, thinking that they're disgusting and aesthetically displeasing is the lack of a reason. But the point is that every second of every day we are having to wrestle with our chimp brains. So we have our human brains and our chimp brains. This is a dramatic oversimplification of behavioral psychology. But this is a model that was put forward by psychologist Steve Peters in his book, The Chimp Paradox. And it's this idea that our chimp brains, our emotive, our emotion-driven brains, which is the amygdala and the limbic system, are constantly wrestling with our more intellectual, more human brains, the prefrontal cortex, which is where we are able to reason and use logic. And so whenever we make decisions, there is this constant battle between the two areas. And when we think about the vast majority of health and fitness products that are available to us on the market, from exercise garments to heart rate monitors to activity trackers to sports nutrition, there are 20 to 30,000 different sports nutrition products on the market at any given time. It's hard enough for people like us to make those kinds of decisions, and we're trained to do so. Whereas somebody who is a layperson, who is not a trained scientist, who's not a practitioner, who's not a dietitian or a nutritionist, is going to be relatively paralyzed by indecision, or they're going to make an emotive decision and ultimately it could be the wrong one. And so this is a problem. This is something that we have to wrestle with, something that we have to contend with. When we add to the fact that marketing companies understand our biases better than we do, it becomes significantly more complicated. Marketing strategies are designed to exploit human biases, to exploit weaknesses in our decision-making processes. And that is why when we look at these statistics, we see that the industry of healthy eating, nutrition, and weight loss is worth, depending on which poll you look at, it's worth in excess of $700 billion worldwide. And it's the second or third highest yielding field in the global wellness economy. So what I've tried to do in the last decade and a half is to try and bring the two worlds of scientific skepticism, critical thinking, closer together with the world of health and fitness. There is not a great deal of overlap in these two worlds at the moment, and what I've tried to do is reframe the health and wellness industry through the critical lens of scientific skepticism, and I've devoted a big part of my time trying to do that. So my book, I'd like to mention that before I go any further, is called The Skeptics Guide to Sports Science, Confronting Myths of the Health and Fitness Industry. And essentially the themes that I'm going to be talking about for the next 10 minutes or so will really be covering in just a little bit of detail the themes of the book. So it's a treatise on critical thinking. I cover nutrition, supplements, training programs, training products, complementary and alternative medicine, decision making in health and fitness, and placebo products as well. And you can find out more about the work I'm doing on my website, nbtiller.com, and reach out to me on Twitter at nbtiller. So let's just very briefly talk about some of the plausible and implausible claims in health and nutrition. There was a study that was published back in 2012 now. It's a little bit dated. It's published by Hennigan and colleagues in the British Medical Journal. And they actually did an empirical study on the commercial health and fitness products, the claims that are made for these products, and the evidence in support of those claims. They looked at 100 different products, from nutrition to sports drinks to exercise garments, and they looked at more than 400 different performance enhancing claims for those products. And what they found was that over half of the claims were unsupported by scientific evidence. Now that won't come as a surprise to you, but what may be a little bit of a surprise is that when scientific evidence was cited in support of those claims, over 85% of those references were found to be at a high risk of bias. Now, what the authors concluded was that there is and I'm quoting here, there is a striking lack of evidence to support the vast majority of sports-related products that make claims related to enhanced performance or recovery. So the essence is that there is this huge disparity between the essence of the commercial claims for these products and the scientific evidence in support of those claims. Again, I don't think that will come as a surprise to any of you, but certainly it's nice to know that it's been shown empirically. So let's look at two different nutrition-based products, if you like, and one of them is fairly benign, mostly evidence-based, and one of them is not evidence-based. Let's talk about protein to begin with. Now, I think it's important when we're working with clients that they understand what protein is and what protein isn't. And this is, I use this as a good example because there is a lot of scientific evidence to support protein as an important part of a healthy, balanced diet. Protein is important for all sorts of things, but there is a lot of misinformation and pseudoscience surrounding protein as well. So we know that proteins are long-chain amino acids. They're important for cell growth and repair. Some amino acids are important for immune function as well. But the way that protein is covered, not just in the scientific literature, but in the media as well, you'd be forgiven for thinking that protein was some kind of magical macronutrient. It won't make you thin. It's not inherently healthful in itself, and it's not going to increase muscle mass without the need for doing exercise. So there's nothing magical, inherently special about protein. There's a lot of what we call bro science around protein as well. One of the rumors that I always heard being bandied around the gym was that protein can't be turned to fat if it's overconsumed. And that, of course, is nonsense. There are very clear metabolic pathways that convert protein or excess amino acids in the blood to fatty acids or free fatty acids. So it can be converted to fat if it's overconsumed. The general scientific guidelines are to consume somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5 grams of protein per day per kilogram of body mass. And that obviously depends on your body mass, how active you are, whether you're competing in some kind of high intensity power-based or strength-based sport. But certainly, those are the rough guidelines. And if you're a healthy, active individual, you need to be consuming at least 1.5 grams per kilo per day of protein. That's what the science suggests. And, as I've said, there are lots of plausible claims and some very implausible claims as well. Let's move on and talk about something that is a little bit less clear. Intravenous nutrient drips, which I know is a bit of a bugbear for lots of nutritionists and dietitians around the world. I wrote about this in the February column of Skeptical Inquirer magazine. Now, intravenous nutrient drips, I'm sure you know, they're drips that go in intravenously, and they deliver several different micronutrients directly into the blood. They are sometimes prescribed in the clinical setting by a medical professional, but usually it's in response to some kind of diagnosed nutrient deficiency that is diagnosed with a blood test, whereas the commercial drips that we see, they cost in excess of $200. There is absolutely no evidence that these drips are necessary in healthy people. And I think what's interesting about these drips is that the retailers of these drips, they carefully imply health or performance-based claims without explicitly stating them. So, for example, they'll have something like a fitness drip, and the fitness drip is advertised alongside some images of some fit, young, healthy people, and they've all got bronze tans and perfectly waxed bodies, and they look fit and healthy. And at no point does it say that using this drip will make you fitter. It doesn't say that it will improve your 10K running time. It doesn't say that it will make you stronger in the gym or help you to lose weight. But they carefully imply these claims very sort of unscrupulously without explicitly stating them. Once the claim is explicitly stated, then it's testable, and it's harder to defend when the claim is then addressed in, when it's scrutinized in court, for example. Most of these drips contain the same 5 to 7 ingredients, with 1 or 2 so-called active ingredients which are not active at all. So for the fitness drip, for example, the active ingredients are L-carnitine and glutamine. Well, I can't see any mechanism by which L-carnitine or glutamine would make you fit necessarily. and the amount of glutamine that they are offering in this fitness strip is 1.5 grams. You get about 3 to 4 times that in a typical chicken breast. So these strips really are superfluous, but they are popular because of celebrity endorsements. And unfortunately, in the modern world of health and wellness, the marketing takes precedence over the science. We have a lot of other things to contend with in the world of nutrition. Lots of before and after images all over Instagram. The clickbait that you'll see in Google search engines. One quick trick for busting belly fat, for example. Weight loss foods for weight loss. Click here to lose weight, or the things that scientists wish they knew about kiwis is one of them that I'm looking here. So we've got a lot to contend with within the world of nutrition. When you add to that the influence that social media has on the way that we and our clients engage with some of these products, it becomes a little bit more complicated. Think about Cristiano Ronaldo. Is probably the most recognizable, most famous soccer player in the world. And every year he makes about $48 million just through Instagram sponsorships. So he gets about $1 million per post, and he advertises Herbalife nutrition, massage devices, sneakers, abdominal stimulators, all sorts of nutrition-based products. Kentucky Fried Chicken was a sponsor of his recently. And it's clear to see that influencers like him are pioneering population trends in the use of these products. But this can have a profound impact on the way that we and our clients interact with these products, because most of us are on social media, and the vast majority of us unfortunately don't know how to engage with social media in a healthy way. So these products are disseminated on social media. We know that fake news spreads further, farther, and deeper than objective facts on social media. We engage with it in a relatively emotive way, so we just have a gut response. We have a gut reaction or a primal reaction to the products and the claims that we see. And a lot of these products are really not proven to improve health or recovery or performance in any way. And in many cases, some of these products actually can have really negative downstream implications for population health and for the clinical world as well. So as one example, look at yo-yo dieting. So fad diets lead to yo-yo dieting. So this is constant weight fluctuations or weight cycling. And yo-yo dieting increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, particularly in women. Studies show that weight cycling or this yo-yo dieting can have negative psychological and behavioral consequences, increasing the risk of psychopathology, life dissatisfaction, binge eating. Most people seem to lose a bit of weight when they try a fad diet, but when you look at 6 month to 1 year or even 2 year follow-ups, they tend to regain all of the weight that they've initially lost, and sometimes even gaining more weight. So we have this constant yo-yo cycling. But the thing that they don't show you on social media, they show you the before and after image of following one of these fad diets, but they don't show you the after image where the individual has regained most of the weight that they initially lost. So one of the mottos that I try to live by is first do no harm. In Latin, it's primum non nocere, and that translates as first do no harm. It's part of the Hippocratic Oath, and it's an oath that really all physicians, all scientists, all science practitioners take, whether they know it or not, but it's first do no harm. Now what that means is it's not just about giving good advice to people and making sure that they're making good health and fitness decisions, particularly in this context in nutrition, but it also means that we have to play our role in actively removing harms from the health and wellness space. There's a lot of absurdity out there, a lot of error. So yes, it means making sure that we're giving good advice, but it means being more proactive in removing bad advice from the health and wellness, from the nutrition sphere. And there's a lot of bad advice out there. So we have to be more proactive in combating misinformation. And there is a lot of misinformation in nutrition. Think about the anti-GMO movement. Think about superfoods. The term superfood is illegal it's been banned in Europe. You can't use it in advertising. Detoxes. Think about organic food and some of the claims that are made surrounding organic food. And so we've got a lot to contend with in nutrition. But as a community, if we can band together, unify the world of nutrition and critical thinking, and that way we can not only make sure that we're giving good advice to our clients and disseminating that good advice on social media, but being proactive to actively remove bad advice. And that's just as important as far as I'm concerned. So just to wrap things up then, once again, I'd like to point you to my website, nbtiller.com. You can find out more about the work that I'm doing there. There are lots of articles that I've written, podcasts, interviews that I've done on television and on radio. You can link to my book, link to my column in Skeptical Inquirer magazine, and hit me up on social media, particularly Twitter at nbtiller. And this is where I tweet about science and health and nutrition, critical thinking, ultra endurance exercise, pseudoscience, all the good stuff. And I'd love to engage with some of you there. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. So I'd like to invite some questions. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the live chat. I'll give you a few moments to leave those comments and I'll get through as many of them as I can. Okay, so let's have a look here then. So one thing that you've heard lately around pseudoscience that has made you want to punch a wall. Second question, you mentioned engaging with social media in a healthy way. Can you give us one tip on how to do that? Okay, one thing that I've heard lately around pseudoscience that's made me want to punch a wall. Well, I guess in terms of I've learned to suppress those kinds of visceral reactions. I know you mean it figuratively, because there is so much pseudoscience, there is so much nonsense that if you got aggravated and angry and frustrated with everything that you saw, then you'd be a very unhappy person. So you've got to do as much as you can to be proactive and to challenge misinformation and disinformation. But I think you've got to be able to keep things in context and not let it ruin your life, because it can very easily do that, and it's easy to allow social media to do that as well. So I suppose I think there's a lot of coverage now about the anti-vax movement. I mean, that's as pseudoscientific as it comes. And when you see the extent the anti-vaccine campaigns, as with a lot of anti-intellectual movements, they are very sophisticated. They have evolved from just people standing around with megaphones telling people not to get vaccinated, whereas now we've got very sophisticated anti-vaccine campaigns. The so-called Dirty Dozen on social media, the 12 individuals that are responsible for disseminating most of the misinformation and disinformation regarding vaccines, that they're reaching millions and millions of people, and that's just 12 people, and it's not by chance. They know how to use the system. They know how to engage with social media better than anyone else. They know how to brand themselves. They know how to get maximum reach on their products. And most scientists and science communicators haven't got a clue on how to do that nearly as effectively. So I find it really demoralizing and very frustrating when you see the reach that social media has, and particularly these people that they know how to game the system. So I think when people make claims that are so clearly and evidently false, particularly around vaccines, because it's harming people, it's costing people lives, and it's very, very sad, and it could be remedied by just, if we had better integration of critical thinking into the educational setup, then we could literally be saving lives. So I think that's one thing that really upsets me and frustrates me. How to engage with social media in a healthy way. I think the very first thing you need to do is understand how social media algorithms work, how your news feed, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter, how it generates content. It generates content based on your own viewing history. These platforms are designed to maximize engagement based on your emotive response. That's why people on Instagram, they all of a sudden they start looking at newsreels, and you can not even realize that half an hour has passed and you've gone down this rabbit hole. Same on YouTube. And it's because these algorithms are designed to grab your attention. It's constantly competing for your attention. And so the very first thing is understand how these algorithms work, understand how they generate content and how they are exploiting your biases in order to keep you engaged. And so I think that's the main thing. And that way you can understand that, well, I know that social media, any platform, is designed to keep me engaged. It's basically generating content based on my previous viewing history. It's going to generate this echo chamber of confirmation bias. So you're only going to see things that you want to see, whether you realize it or not. And I think understanding that very basic premise is the first step in learning how to use social media in a healthy way. Unfortunately, my book is not available on audiobook. Nobody wants to hear me talk for 10 hours. And that's because I would have to do it myself. And there are no very easy and accessible platforms for doing that. I've looked into recording an audio version, but unfortunately it's not available on audiobook as of yet. It's available on Kindle, hardback, paperback. I can recommend the Kindle or paperback versions there, and they're available wherever you tend to buy your books. Yeah, exactly. So, and this is the thing with social media, is that people don't know how to use it. And when, I had a couple of slides talking specifically about social media influencers, and I wrote about this in my recent column for Skeptical Inquirer on Methylene Blue, which is a product that's taken orally, and it was originally used as in the clinical environment to treat blood disorders. Before that, it was used as an industrial dye, and now for some reason, social media influencers are touting it as a mitochondrial optimizer and a cognitive enhancer. And these people, I don't know what the exact criteria is for social media influencer, but generally they have to have, a large number of followers. And people who follow influencers on social media will do so because they conflate this idea that somebody with a lot of followers is necessarily is an expert, or that their advice is necessarily going to be good advice just because they've got a lot of followers. So the first rule, of course, is that Twitter followers are not credentials. Instagram followers are not credentials. And there was a study on this recently, and they actually found that there is an inverse correlation between the number of followers that somebody has on Instagram and their educational background. So how many educational qualifications that they have. So the more followers they had, the more followers they had, the fewer qualifications they had. They also found that the people who gave that had the most followers on Instagram gave generally the least sound health and fitness advice. They were giving the advice that people like us would consider to be more questionable, and that's a profound problem. And going back to this idea of this product that they've been touting most recently, Methylene Blue, there is a nugget of truth to some of the clinical benefits, but those claims have been exaggerated and misappropriated by influencers, because of course a lot of these influencers have affiliate links. So the more products you buy, the more money that they make. So it's really important to learn how to engage with social media in a healthy way, and I discuss a lot of these things and more in the book. Okay, so I think I will, unless there are any more comments or questions, I think I will leave it there. I'd just like to say a huge thank you once again to Build Up Dietitians for the opportunity to talk, specifically Leah McGrath. Again, find out more about the work I'm doing on my website, nbtiller.com. Find me on Twitter at nbtiller, and I do my best to share good advice, good information, and tackle the bad advice and the misinformation. And I urge you all to try and do the same. All right, thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your day.